Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts and other stuff they're involved in. My guest today is a full-time writer who penned the book Tragedy Man, a Horror Anthology, and more. He has a brand new short story collection out called Dreaded Invocations. He's also planning on getting back into feature film development, which we'll definitely talk about. On top of that, he studied martial arts for over 25 years, including BJJ, Jeet Kune and others. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Tony Caro. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing really good. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, I appreciate it. It's starting to become a habit with me having guests in other countries. You're in Thailand right now. I think in the last probably 6 or 7 weeks, I've had guests in about probably 8 different countries. So it's starting to become a little more common. Everybody's
on the run.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, probably looking for better weather than we have here sometimes, maybe. But well, first of all, I appreciate this. I truly do. I love, especially people that, I'm not as familiar with. I love getting to talk to them and hear their stories and stuff. So I truly appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate being here.
What we like to do with all my guests, I want to go back to the very beginning. I want to know where that first interest came from, where that first spark came from that started your martial arts journey.
Wow. Well, it goes back a long time, and it's something that kind of caught me by surprise as a little kid. I was probably about 6 years old. The year was 1978, and just a little kid sitting in front of the TV watching, whatever's rolling off the UHF channels back in those days. Yep. And, a commercial popped on, and it was, you would always get commercials for the drive-in circuit or the second-run theaters, and I would say exploitation fare or, low-budget films, horror movies and action movies, westerns, all that stuff. And out of the blue, there was this weird, I wouldn't say weird, but kind of like an ominous commercial that kind of opened up on this dude wearing sunglasses. And never saw this guy before, never heard of him, just, but pretty prominent in the way he was presented in the commercial. And this voiceover narration comes up and it says something like, meet Chuck Norris, the man who taught Bruce Lee everything he knows. And then I remember that it jumped to the clip from, this is Good Guys Wear Black. Mm-hmm. And it was not Norris's first movie, wasn't even his first big hit. Breaker Breaker was his first big hit.
Nice. Yep.
But, they did that running, jumping sidekick through the windshield of a car. A moving car, allegedly it wasn't. It was an editing trick.
Right.
But, this is before CGI. This is before anything really sophisticated. And, you didn't even have, you had VCRs and all that, but they were kind of very expensive. Not that many people had them. So when you watched a commercial like that, you saw it one time and it would leave a really big impact. And I certainly wasn't the only person who really got grabbed by that commercial and that stunt because, Good Guys Wear Black was a massive, massive box office hit.
Yeah.
And it was, this was not a studio film. It was an independent film. It was a lower budgeted one. And it just clicked. And it really, really, the audiences ran with it. And, the martial arts movie business at that time, it was, the Kung Fu movie cycle had ended. And it wasn't guaranteed box office that you would make any, film would make any money if it was martial arts centric. And then the 4 big Norris movies came out, like Breaker Breaker, Good Guys Wear Black, A Force of One, and The Octagon. These were all huge, huge hits. And I think they gave the martial arts world a shot in the arm. And films like that, or even TV appearance, or any pop cultural references to martial arts. It's obviously cinematic. It's obviously fictional. It's obviously over the top. Mm-hmm. But it gets it out there, so to speak. Like in the background, in the entertainment background, you're seeing martial arts. You're seeing martial artists. And you're getting the idea of martial arts as a lifestyle and a hobby in your subconscious. So that kind of supported, for better or for worse, the martial arts industry, the studios, the schools, the dojos, all the ancillary products like magazines and posters and this, that, and the other thing. If it wasn't for the motion picture industry or the television industry, martial arts wouldn't be as popular as it eventually became.
Right.
It would have just been this cult thing that, advertised in comic books or little studios here and there. It wouldn't have had the mainstream success. It wouldn't have entered public consciousness, and it wouldn't have launched as big of an industry as it was with all that pop culture influence.
Oh, definitely. I agree completely. It's funny how you talk about that because, we're close to the same age. So in 78, I would have been 4. So we're about 2 years apart. But for me, I saw those movies, but that isn't what got me into martial arts. Because what's funny is before I got involved, I didn't get involved in martial arts till 84 when I saw Karate Kid. But when I saw Breaker, Smoking the Bandit, and Convoy, and I got into CB radio at a young age, actually. And it's and I set up a small CB radio and used to, because my hometown had 3 big, like Larson Boats and Muncie, all these companies. So truckers always coming in, and I'd be this little, 8, 9-year-old kid thinking I was the coolest kid in the world talking to truckers on the CB. So, but I remember Breaker. Yeah. Convoy. Love it.
Convoy was, I don't know the whole story behind it, but I think Sam Peckinpah, the director, lost control of that movie. I think his rough cut was 3 hours long. And,
wow.
And they had, oh my God, Bruce Lee's student. My God, I'm drawing a blank. Oh,
Chris
man.
Christophers?
James Coburn.
Oh, James Coburn, yes.
James Coburn. Yeah. James Coburn was a Bruce Lee student. He actually directed a lot of Convoy. A lot of people don't know that.
I did not know that.
Because,
wow.
Yeah, because Peckinpah was not in a good state at the time he was making that movie. So they had James Coburn signed on as a second unit director because he wanted to get, I believe, I hope I'm not mixing the story up, but he needed to get his DGA card so he could direct, and that was one of the ways to build credit for that. He ended up having to direct a lot of the movie because Sam was it just was a troubleshoot, put it through that way.
Interesting. That's actually kind of cool. So then at that age, then that was the first interest. How long was it before you actually got to start studying, or what was kind of next in the journey?
Well, what happened was in those days, it was always in the back of my mind to do it, to take, I'm a little kid. What I mean by in the back of my mind is that you had the martial arts studios. I grew up in Philadelphia. And at that time, again, you have to look at the era. And in those days, you didn't have a lot of entertainment. You didn't have a lot of home entertainment. You had to go out. Mm-hmm. And martial arts was an active hobby out of, it still is today, but something to get out of the house with. And you didn't have gyms. You didn't have the 24-hour fitness that you had, not in the late 70s, early 80s. So you had all these martial arts studios here and there, and they had a mystique about it because, you didn't have the internet. You didn't have anything other than seeing clips on television or seeing something in a book. So you didn't really know what martial arts was, what the training involved, what went on. You just kind of had these vague ideas about this subculture / self-defense / fitness world. And the interest would be there. And as I got older, like you said, I got caught up with the big explosion when the Karate Kid was, came out and was a big hit. And I didn't see the movie until years later. But what had happened was like anything or any type of fad or fitness fad, it catches fire. It becomes very easy to sign up customers. So when everybody has this desire to learn karate, somebody who has a decent, say, martial arts studio or Kempo or Taekwondo school at that time, they got a lot of students. And before you know it, they're getting such overflow that they start expanding, and then people start opening up their own schools to jump in on the bandwagon. So there was a big explosion around 84, 85. And again, you had other movies coming, whether a lot of people want to admit it or not. The old canon films like American Ninja and Return of the Ninja and Jim Cotta and all that stuff. That was making bank at the box office. And every time a movie like that rolls out, you're getting at that time you were getting advertisement for martial arts schools. So it led to a big boom, in the 80s. But fortunately, when the boom died and, those casual fans, those casual students, they leave. And when they leave, it cuts the legs off of a school that was relying on all this influx of new students. So that was something I learned about the martial arts is you can ride a fad to make money, but you can't rely on it for long-term business. And I've seen that cycle play out. I've seen it play out with the cardio kickboxing fad, where everybody was signing up 100 students because they were $99 for 3 months of summer, and you can lose weight. And, it would bring in big influx of students and then, customers, and then boom, they'd be gone. So it just was the nature of the business at that time. But yeah, you like a lot of people, you get caught up into it when it starts getting hot.
Right.
And then when it gets cold, you kind of lose interest. But I had been in and out of interest with the martial arts probably up until my 20s. And then I started going to classes regularly. I signed up with a JKD kickboxing school in New York. And that was also my introduction to submission wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because it was a JKD concept-based academy, and they had a grappling program, and you got to see Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the very early stages as it was taught through other schools, which is kind of interesting. What would happen was somebody would offer, it could be a karate school, it could be a kickboxing school, it could be a whatever. And because there was a buzz about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they started bringing these guys in for black belts in for seminars, and they would start teaching classes as best as they could based on the limited training that was available at the time. And that kind of made it a unique entry into martial arts world, because it was like this completely different martial art that found its way into a pre-established traditional martial arts structure, and kind of worked its way out from there and developed its own footing, and in my opinion began to take on the role that judo had played in the 1960s. Because if you go back and you read, say, a Black Belt magazine or any magazine from like 1964, 1965, judo was that wildly popular competitive sport. They're focused on throwing and grappling, and then you had your rest of the martial arts world, your karate, your kung fu, your this or that, and judo was kind of out there on its own because it was an Olympic sport, and it just followed a different path from the rest of the martial arts world. And now you jump ahead 20, 30 years later, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very well established, far in my opinion, far exceeds the popularity of judo. Not to knock judo, but in terms of what it was back in the 60s and how popular it was versus today, I'd say that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu essentially became the preferred grappling art of the mainstream.
Oh, I would agree.
Martial arts student.
I mean, you look back in the mid 90s, and you were lucky if you could find one BJJ school within a few hundred miles of your house, and now it's a pretty good chance you're going to find one within about a half hour or less of where most people live in this country at this point.
Yeah, it exploded. Yeah. I mean, it was in the very early days, where you were learning it peripherally, so to speak, where you were learning it. You weren't training at a jiu-jitsu school. You were training, like I said, like a kickboxing, Muay Thai, JKD type school, where they would have lessons and a blue belt would be teaching the class. And it was simply like that because there just was nobody in the United States who could do it. You could have entire states where you had no jiu-jitsu schools, much less access to a high-level instructor. So, and of course, the popularity of it, the development of the tournament circuit, the popularity of UFC and all that, it really helped establish jiu-jitsu as something that's here to stay and has a massive following and a massive devoted participants, very, very, very committed.
Yeah.
That's one thing you'll notice in a jiu-jitsu school. They're very overall. It's a very, very committed approach to getting good at the art, and
I would
kind
agree.
of an enthusiasm. It's a unique enthusiasm. You don't see people doing it half-hearted. The overwhelming majority of people who become jiu-jitsu students really embrace it with a lot of enthusiasm. And that kind of contributes to what makes it so much fun to enroll in a jiu-jitsu program or train at a jiu-jitsu school. It's just I don't know. I mean, it's comparable. It's like surfing or any other type of active hobby / lifestyle that has some sort of goal to it.
Yeah.
The progression of the belt. Progressing up the belt based on skill forces a commitment and it forces an enthusiasm, and that's what makes it such a unique and interesting art to take part in.
It's funny you mentioned surfing, because I've actually read quite a few articles that a lot of surfers also practice martial arts. And I know, probably one of the most popular surfers in the world, Kelly Slater, has been studying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for, I think, well over a decade at this point. Kind of the lifestyle kind of goes hand in hand, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, you know what? I tried to do surfing, took a few lessons. I did okay, but I didn't do enough of it to where I could do much.
Yeah.
I could ride the board straight on in. That's about it. But what I noticed was when you're surfing and when you're doing jiu-jitsu, there's actually an overlap, and that overlap extends to bicycle riding. It extends to riding an electric scooter or anything. What I mean is the overlap is balance, and I found to maintain your balance in jiu-jitsu versus maintaining your balance in surfing versus maintaining your balance walking across a room, it's the same. Balance is balance.
Mm-hmm.
And if you understand the basic points of balance as it relates to surfing, it'll carry over into jiu-jitsu and other areas. I mean, of course, you got to modify it. It's a different, you're applying it under different circumstances.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you already have certain athletic skills, they carry over into other athletic skills. So the transition is not as difficult or as removed as people may think.
That makes perfect sense. I used to skateboard when I was a kid too, same type thing. So, although I was always better at martial arts than I was at skateboarding, but I definitely get the balance thing. So that school you started at then in your early to mid 20s, is that the same one and same kind of group you've been training with off and on all this time, or did you switch schools over time?
No, I was living in New York, and I bounced around because the type of work I do. I go from city to city, to country to
Mm-hmm.
I travel a lot. Like this last 3 months, I've been on both sides of both coasts of the U.S. I was in Germany, I was in Hong Kong, I was now in Thailand right now. So I move around, and that does affect your training.
Yeah.
And it does affect your affiliations. So when I was in New York, I left. I went back to the Philadelphia area, and eventually I bounced around a little bit with jiu-jitsu and other things. And I found my way to another JKD school in New Jersey, and they were affiliated with the Machados, and I actually met Egan Machado at a seminar there. That was the first time I met him. And 2 or 3 years later, I had moved to California, and I was enrolled at the Machado School in Torrance, where Egan taught and Haja Machado taught, and other people in the Machado fold. And for the past, many, many years, I've been with Egan, and I've been with his black belts and his affiliates. So that's been my consistent thing. I've been a Machado student consistently since going back on and off almost 20 years. I mean, what I mean by on and off, like I said, sometimes, you move to different states here or there where life gets in the way, and it kind of can mess up things you want to do. Like sometimes, you have to prioritize other things. That's the unfortunate thing of getting older in martial arts. It's you have to sometimes put your priorities into your business or your family or this or that. It's not something that you can do like you normally would do when you're 20, 25. When you work a job that's entry level, you put in, you go 9 to 5, and then 5 it's done. You don't really have many other responsibilities, so you can spend them on other pursuits. So, but as you get older, well, you have less time to do that stuff, but you just got to prioritize it a little better. And if you're stuck taking a break, you have to take a break. I'll give you an example. I very rarely get injured, but, I had a shoulder injury, and what are you going to do? You have to skip out for 8 weeks because, you're got to heal up.
Yep.
You wouldn't be doing yourself any benefits coming back, making an injury worse, and you're going to waste, you're going to spend even more time on the shelf. So that's just my little riff on it.
Oh, that's good. That makes sense. Age and injuries, and it takes longer to heal as you get older. And yeah, I'm with you there. Trust me.
But these days, I'm a brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and I've been with Egan and Egan's affiliates and his instructors for pretty much 90% of my Jiu-Jitsu career. Although in Thailand, with Arete Jiu-Jitsu, which is one of the big gyms and big schools here, and that's kind of what I do. I train there, and then when I'm on the West Coast, I'm over at Egan School in Beverly Hills.
Nice. Earlier when we were talking, you had mentioned that you compete every now and then. So do you remember your first ever tournament you competed in?
Yes, it was a disaster.
Okay.
First of all, you got to be in your weight class.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not in my weight class. I was too heavy. And, it didn't go well because, again, I should have been in 2 weight classes lower. So the next time I did this was, I think, Naga, very early. I think it was a white belt. And, I lost that match. It was the first time I competed, and I, lost by a footlock. And, I said, hey, you know what? I want to bounce back. And I shed some weight. I put more emphasis on cardio. I went down from like 180 to 160
Wow.
for the next one I did. And, this was the next one was a smaller tournament called the Tri-State Ground Control Classic, which was in North Jersey. And I did better. I lost a couple on points, one on points, and it was a fun learning experience. But then I kind of I was not somebody who was an active competitor where it was something that I wanted to do all the time or compete all the time. It was a now and then thing, which is the way it is with me today, and every so often I'll throw my hat in the ring and jump in.
Nice.
And it's a little different now because the last tournament, like when you do it when you're younger, it's the adult division, it's more competitive. It's competitive, it's tournament, obviously.
Right.
But when you get older and you're looking at masters, senior, those type of divisions, it's more, I think, more of a personal challenge, like to go out there and say, hey, you know what, I can still do this. Even though I'm at an older age, I'm having fun with this. I enjoy it. I want to maximize my experience, and win, lose or draw. You go out there with the attitude. You want to put your best foot forward, and you don't want to, for lack of a better word or phrase, you don't want to just be older and just roll over and die. You want to be active. You want to do things that are memorable, that are meaningful. So for older persons who want to do the Masters division or stay active or throw their hat in the ring in that type of environment, it's a lot about just not wanting to give in to just being older and just being somebody who's sedentary or essentially washed up. You want to be active. You want to be relevant. You want to still live life, and you want to still live life athletically that you did when you were younger. You want to pursue many of the same hobbies, some of the same pursuits. Surfers surf well. Surfers surf up in age. Jiu-Jitsu guys will compete up in age. It's just softball players will do it. If you still have the desire and the gumption to do it, you'll do it at an advanced age, and you'll win, lose or draw. You can have a lot of fun with it, and it's a unique experience. You don't have to go and do every tournament. You don't have to win a gold medal every time.
Right.
If you just give it a shot here or there when time's permitting where you can train effectively, you just jump in. Like I've had instructors that I know that, man, they do like 4, 5, 6 tournaments a year, and they're well into their 50s, and they ain't even remotely slowing down. There's no reason for them to slow down because they're winning. Like they'll say this is going to be the last one I do, and then they win a gold medal. Well, they're not going to be the last one they do. They're going to keep at it.
That makes sense. Yeah. So now, did you ever get into any stand-up tournaments or strictly grappling?
I did some karate thingies when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Later on in life, I got heavily into boxing.
Okay.
I got, not late in life, but like late 20s, early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I got even more heavily into kickboxing and boxing.
Okay.
In my 30s and towards my late 30s. And I was very interested in the science of boxing, the science of kickboxing. What I mean by that is I was really enamored with how technical striking was and how scientific it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I got really, really into it. And, I did flirt with the idea of, can I jump in and do a amateur bout here or there. Now, boxing was obviously out of the question because you're too old. And, you deal with the athletic commission and all that, at least in the States where I was at. But kickboxing was not, in the state of Pennsylvania, kickboxing, non-Muay Thai kickboxing,
mm-hmm.
was not regulated by the commission.
Okay.
So there were a couple times where, I did want to train for it and was semi-booked for a small kickboxing event
mm-hmm.
in Pennsylvania, but, it just didn't come about. And as you get older and older and older, you're not really thinking about jumping in and fighting a kickboxing match,
Right,
so
right.
Unfortunately, I didn't get that opportunity.
That's too bad. So did you ever delve into the teaching side of martial arts? Was that ever something that interested you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been teaching for years and years and years, but I do it low key.
Okay.
I never had a studio. I never, once in a while I would offer private lessons here or there just to test the waters with that.
Mm-hmm.
But generally I kind of like to just hang in the background and offer advice, offer tips to people, or offer assistance to somebody who might be new or might be a beginner, or somebody just might ask me for help. And just having been around a long time, and instructors knowing you, sometimes you can take over a class for a while, or you can fill in when somebody's out, and it gives you an opportunity to explore the teaching side of the art, which helps you learn in another way. Now, and there was a time where I would teach a class on a like a Saturday morning at a boxing gym for I wasn't teaching boxing, I was teaching no-gi Jiu-Jitsu.
Nice.
But it was low key. It was just a few people,
mm-hmm.
And it went on for, a few years. And it just was that thing I did in my schedule. Like, okay, on Saturday I'll be going in and I'll be teaching the guys, and nothing with really big commercial endeavors. It just was a way to keep going, keep active, supplement my own training and explore things that I thought were valuable both to the students and to myself, which was we would focus very heavily on fundamentals. So whenever I would try to coach somebody or was in a position to do a little teaching, I always would try to strip everything down and get to the most basic fundamental elements of it, because I think that goes for every martial art I'm talking about.
Right.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here, teaching allows you to refresh core principles. It helps you refresh fundamental concepts. So it's by repeating that or running through that material again as an instructor, you're also doing yourself a vital service, because we don't always focus on our basics or our fundamentals. Sometimes we get caught up in other things that may have our interest. So, but yeah, I would like to teach more if that opportunity arises, but I
mm-hmm.
never saw myself opening up a school or anything like that.
Okay. No, it makes sense. So in your years of martial arts, did you ever do any weapons training? And if so, do you have a favorite weapon you've trained with?
Yes, I did, because I did JKD.
Mm-hmm.
I did a bit of Kali, which was the sticks and the knife and all that.
Yep.
What was interesting was with JKD, there was a fencing element to it. There's a heavy fencing element to certain techniques and certain principles. So I actually signed up, and I didn't do a lot of it, but I signed up for fencing lessons at the Torrance Fencing Club. This is a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do a lot, but had a good enrolled in an introductory 10 or 12 lesson basic fencing course, and that really blew my mind. That probably would be my favorite weapons training that I ever had, because Olympic fencing is it's just incredible. It's really, it just has to be seen and experienced to be believed. I mean, it's
nice.
It's incredible. I mean, the timing and the movements and the subtleties. I mean, Olympic fencing is just, it's really out there, man. I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And fencing is the parent art to modern boxing, like fencing heavily influenced bare knuckle boxing, and then bare knuckle boxing evolved into modern boxing. And, the fencer's lunge and, the boxing jab are basically the same thing. It's just the jab's a modified, evolved version of what was a fencing lunge. So you'll see fencing components and fencing elements in boxing. If you look for it, you'll see it. Of course, you have to know the reference. If you have a basic reference of certain fencing moves and movements, and you'll actually even get an appreciation for some elements of traditional arts, because you'll see fencing and saber and broadsword and other classical weapons-based systems. You'll see it in those movements, but we're going back hundreds and hundreds of years, like before firearms and this and that.
Yeah.
Bladed weapons and swords and sword fighting were far more, they were known skills. They were greater. I mean, that's what armies fought with, 1,000 years ago.
Yep.
So there was more knowledge about how to use a sword and how to use those type of implements, and that carried over into empty hand fighting. And it's kind of lost today. Mm-hmm. But if you stumble upon it like I did by accident, and you have an appreciation for the historical side and the origins of some of this stuff, the little things like that will really, really give you food for thought. So, but like in terms of I would have to say in terms of weapons, oh man, yeah, Olympic fencing is really just a mind blower.
2 local martial arts schools I've been meaning to check out and just haven't had time yet. I'm hoping to this fall. We have a local fencing school now, and we have a Japanese Aikido school. And I'd love to check them.
Oh, wow.
But I've seen the gentleman from the Aikido school do a demonstration, but I've never actually gone and watched one of his classes. But I'd like to do that, and I'd like to at least just watch the fencing class, and then possibly consider, doing the trial thing just to, like you said, just to check it out. And I think it'd be fun to learn.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that completely just grabbed me with fencing, like, not that I developed the skill, but from watching other people do it, was just the ability to hit that bullseye at the right time, with the right amount of force, the right amount of speed, the right amount of accuracy, and with almost no telegraphing any of the movement. It's like, wow, this is just, it's just amazing. But fencing's kind of like, it's not something that is widely popular. It's unfortunate, but
it seems people only talk about it when the Olympics come about, usually, unfortunately. So.
Well, like I remember sometimes it would occasionally become faddish, and you'd see people sign up for fencing lessons at some of these fencing academies, and then whatever stimulated that interest didn't always last, and faddish element would die, and then it would go back to its hardcore competitive training following the folks who want to take it up so they can compete in fencing, compete in state level or beyond. But for the average person, you don't see a lot of casual fencing fans. It's once in a while something will appear in the news, or somebody will get a buzz on a local news magazine or something like that, and we get a spike in attendance, and which is fine. But ultimately, fencing is a kind of its own little quiet little world, so to speak.
Yeah. maybe I'll have to reach out to the local fencing instructor and invite him on the podcast. Be a good little intro for it and let people know about it. So you inspired me, I think. I'm going to reach out to him. So cool. So to get just a hair off topic, I'm really curious because your full-time job is you're a writer. And I'm curious what led to that? Where did that interest in writing come from? I have a daughter who's very interested in writing too. So I love interviewing authors and stuff, but I'm just curious what started that passion for you, and talk a little bit about some of your books.
Well, what started it was, I think I just had I wouldn't say I was great at it, but I was good at it from when I first started writing,
Mm-hmm.
In school. And I think I had a bit of a creative spark to me, and I continued to write. I enjoyed writing, and it was something that I delved into on and off. What I mean by that is I would write a freelance article, like a movie review for a newsletter or something like that. I would send it in, and it would get published, and maybe there'd be 50 copies of that newsletter would go out. But it was a start. Later on, I got involved with screenplay development, which is the developing of the story. It could be acquiring the rights to a life story. It could be adapting a book. That's what people did in story departments and in the screenplay development world. And I was doing that, and I was honing some of my literary talents and literary analysis talents. And I gained a new skill while working there. We started getting involved in internet marketing. And from internet marketing, I started becoming a ghostwriter and a copywriter. And that's what I did full time. So even though that's not fiction, that's not creative nonfiction, it hones your skills because the English language is the English language. So I developed my writing skills, writing a lot of marketing-related materials, press releases and public relations stuff, publicity materials, commercial blogging, like blogging for small businesses and whatnot, helping with website construction and content and all that. So that all over the years helped me refine my ability to communicate well in writing. And previously, I had also did a lot of creative nonfiction writing, which is speculative writing. I would write about movies, motion pictures, or books or whatever. But, you take a strange angle. Like there was an old movie called Death Dream, which is a kind of a monkey's paw type horror story about a Vietnam vet returning home. And his parents slowly realized that he died in Vietnam and that this is really more of a ghost/vampire type character. Well, Death Dream was really popular. It was popular in syndication through the 70s. Well, I started noticing that there were similarities between this kooky horror movie and the classic film The Graduate. I wrote a piece for horrornews.net on comparing Death Dream to The Graduate, which, was kind of, it's nonfiction, but it borderlines on fiction in the sense that it's really speculative. So I started noticing that, since my nonfiction is drifting to the creative end of fiction, maybe it's time to start giving pure fiction a try. So I began to write Amazon, because in Amazon you can self-publish. And you can put your material out there and see how it goes. And I did mostly genre fiction, pulp style fiction, like that. I did a sci-fi story, novelette, and nonfiction book on Universal Monsters, and then followed it up with Tragedy Man, which was a horror anthology that people liked. It didn't sell all that great. And then the fourth book, Dreaded Invocations, was a short story collection, and it did better than expected. I guess I learned something from the previous books I put out about marketing it better and marketing enough and putting it at the right price and developing the right advertising slogans and taglines and visual images, and it paid off. People really liked the book, and it did fairly well. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it sold enough that I was happy with the figures. So, I said to myself, it gives me enthusiasm to move along and to try something new. To write a new book and maybe expand into something new like fiction podcast. You build on your your past successes. You have a
Yeah.
little success here or there, and you build on the next one. And that's the approach I take to my writing.
Okay.
And I get a little bit involved with trying to get back involved with film development, which of course may have some martial arts elements to it.
Really?
Because
Okay.
if you're dealing with action movies or
Yeah.
anything with science, even somehow science fiction, you're going to have fight scenes and martial arts scenes and all that stuff. So who knows, maybe my background will prove helpful. Actually, there was one I did can't talk about it too much, but I worked on a film that had some fight scenes in it, and I was not involved with fight coordinating. I was in a production assistant capacity, but because I had the background in martial arts, they asked me if I could help out with the fight coordinating, and that opened up an opportunity. And for that one day, I helped choreograph a little bit of the fighting, and then
Very cool.
That was really a lot of fun, unexpected, but it was. Those are some things that your martial arts background will take you.
Mm-hmm.
You never know when they'll pop up or prove valuable.
Well, you mentioned in one of the emails that we might see some martial arts in one of your future books also.
Oh, you absolutely will. Yeah, there's 2 science fiction works that I'm working on right now. One of them has a boxing centric theme. It's a bit like the old pulp boxing tales. Like, this is a bit of lost literary history.
Okay.
Many decades ago, when you had pulp fiction, the glory days of pulp fiction, the 1930s, with the Weird Tales and all these magazines that would come out, everybody thinks that those works were exclusively westerns, or they were exclusively horror, or they were exclusively sword and sorcery, or they were exclusively crime. But it was a lot more diverse than people realize. And you had something known as sports fiction. And sports fiction, literally, it could be fiction stories about basketball. It could be about football, baseball. They were geared towards a blue-collar sports audience at a time before radio was, widespread, and long before TV. You had fiction and nonfiction sports magazines. I mean, obviously nonfiction is not going to surprise anybody, but that you would have serialized basketball fiction a lot of people probably don't realize that was popular. But among the most popular was boxing, and you had all these really cool tales of bare knuckle boxers and adventurers and pulp characters like sailors who would travel from port to port and get involved in bare knuckle contests and tournaments, almost like blood sport type stories of the 1930s.
Okay.
So, that type of martial arts writing,
nice.
Combat sports writing, kind of influences a bit of one of the new works that I'm currently involved with.
Okay.
And then the other is a bit more traditional. It's more of a cyberpunk story. And when you're doing cyberpunk, you're going to have some over-the-top fight scenes, because that's just the nature of, sci-fi action.
Yeah.
So, having the martial arts background, you don't want to get too heavy or too weighted down with descriptions of fight scenes or this or that. But you draw on, your knowledge and your background to make something read smoother, more engaging, maybe different, different perspective of how you craft a combative scene in a literary forum. So, again, draw influence from what you know, and one skill will come through another skill.
Cool. I will definitely be watching for those to come out. All your years of martial arts and all your life, is there one philosophy that is at the top of your list?
Yeah, just keep it simple. I mean, just keep it simple. I mean, people sometimes, when you say keep it simple, a lot of people say, well, I don't do 15 moves or 20 moves. I don't do a lot. Yeah, but simple can sometimes mean refinement and, trying to get the most out of fewer movements, not trying to throw everything against the wall and hoping that it sticks. It would be, what are the highest percentage moves? What are the most important moves? What requires the least amount of effort? What requires the least amount of strength? What requires the the least amount of, or I should say, the least amount of unnecessary effort or unnecessary strength or unnecessary explosive movement. If you don't have to exert an enormous amount of effort, why exert it? You're only going to tire yourself out. You're only going to add more to what you want to accomplish. You're making it the path a little longer. So if you refine things and you keep it simple and you stick with the highest percentage moves, exude a little patience with things, you probably will get more out of it than trying to overanalyze, overcompensate, or just try to do too much and muscle your way through things. Like I said, just keep it simple, keep it straightforward, stick with the highest percentage moves, and make adjust if things don't work out. You take the feedback and you try to improve areas where you need improvement based upon your experience and your training sessions. Evaluate them, look at what you did good, what you didn't do good, and then make the necessary adjustments.
Nice. All right, I got a few fun questions we used to wrap up the interview, and this is where I'm gonna really enjoy some of your answers for this one. But let's say if you were to decide, maybe when you were younger, maybe today, you were gonna step into the octagon and fight an MMA fight or a boxing match, what would your walk-up music be? What song would be playing as you're walking into the cage or the ring?
Oh wow, I'd have to think about that, because you know what? It kind of depends on how the audience sees you.
Mm-hmm.
If I went out there today at 52, I'd probably be a very sympathetic character, because I probably would want music that would complement who I am and where I am at that stage of my career, and
mm-hmm.
what would reasonably be expected. But if I were a lot younger, and say 23 and very brash, and was trying to play something a bit more heelish, you would want music for that. But if I had to go with music for something, I would probably go something cinematic. If I could get the rights to
like a movie score type thing, or
then but have it reworked. Just have it reworked, or because when you're talking about the fight game, you got to have something that's upbeat, that's sweeping, something like like Gladiator. You want
mm-hmm.
music that's really because it's a combat sport. So you want something that hypes up the audience and hypes up your arrival, but it has to complement the type of fighter. You don't want it to be disjointed. So I'm not sure if I have an exact answer for that, but I definitely would start looking at maybe some of the old Italian movie scores, like something from All the Colors of the Dark, which is more of a giallo kind of murder mystery, but with a really, really upbeat, eerie score. So if you could rework that would be really cool. That would be really cool for you to come to the octagon too.
Now you got me changing my mind, because my go-to answer has always been "You're the Best" from the Karate Kid, just because I love that song. But now I'm like, when you talk about movie scores, if money was no object, I would pay John Williams to have a live orchestra playing the theme to Star Wars as I walked in. That'd be cool.
They would have to sell a lot. They'd have to sell a lot of papers to cover that cost.
Well, of course, but it would be fun. It would definitely be epic. People would remember it. So
they just do what they did with I remember WCW Nitro. They just hired Kiss $500,000 to play a segment. So
that's just crazy.
There's $500,000.
Yeah.
The window.
Okay. All right. Now this one, it doesn't have to be 4. I've had people give as few as 2 and as many as 8, but 3, 4, 5 names you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts.
Oh, wow. There's so many. And there's so many different eras. Obviously Bruce Lee,
mm-hmm.
Because Bruce Lee basically was martial arts to a lot of people. He was a symbol of it.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris, obviously iconic, personal, people who, wow, there's so many. You got Dan Ipsano, you had Elio Gracie, wow, Carlson Gracie,
mm-hmm.
all these innovative, and you could even break it down into Fumio Nomura and karate, back in the day. Very influential with all the books and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many people. Like anybody, I would say, I'll put it to you this way. Anybody who is a Hall of Fame caliber martial artist, like somebody who really, really is a standout, or was widely influential, deserves it. Unfortunately, some of them get a little bit forgotten, like if you look at like someone like Ed Parker, Ed Parker pretty much, I believe he was enormously influential in creating the idea of a commercial dojo.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure that if it wasn't for him, somebody else would have come along, but they might have come along a lot later, and that would change the development of everything. So, when he opened up his school in Pasadena, that had a huge impact on the growth of martial arts, like a ripple effect.
Yep.
So that's one of the things, like when you talk about who's a Hall of Fame or who belongs on Mount Rushmore, we tend to think current and not so much historically, because a lot of what you have today comes from the foundation that was set in the past. And, I remember reading a magazine, back issue of an old black belt magazine from 1970, and they were talking about the controversy of importing racquetball and racquetball health and fitness type business practices into the martial arts. And they're like, well, we don't know if this is going to be a good thing. Well, not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But I think that when you look at a successful business, how it collects its dues, how it maintains its waiting areas and all that stuff, I don't think that was a bad thing that they imported, essentially good small business management principles from a similar business, but that's kind of like, I don't want to say it's lost, it's just because people aren't, they're not historians. They don't pick up an old issue just to say, hey, what was going on back then, just out of curiosity. And you get all these eye-opening facts about the history of it. So, and so when it comes to trying to single people out or elevate them, we tend to just think current. We don't always look at the big picture of history. And some people get overlooked or they get forgotten about. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah, but you named some good ones, though, that's for sure. So how about a favorite martial arts book?
Wow, there's so many of them. A favorite, well, Renzo Gracie's old book, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was the first full-color Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, fully detailed, fully photo illustrated, fully done in color. It really was like a wow. Like when that came out, it was like really like wow. Like there was nothing out there like it in the Jiu-Jitsu world. Another really great book, which I really enjoyed, was it was a Tuttle publication. I don't even remember the title off the top of my head. I think it was oh boy, I can't remember, but it was I can't remember the title, but it was a book on Zen Buddhism and the martial arts. It's called When Buddhists Attack, and that is a great book, which gives you a look at the Buddhist influence on traditional martial arts. Zen and the Martial Arts is another great book. That's a great book because it's written by Joe Himes essentially was a hobbyist, and this was he was involved in, as a professional writer and other endeavors, and like a lot of other people in Hollywood, like Sterling Silliphant or Steve McQueen, in the 1960s and 70s, that was their passion, their pursuit, and it kind of gives you an insight into martial arts, kind of like almost like an outsider perspective on how it benefited them. So that is a great book. It's definitely worth checking out. Peaceful Warrior is another excellent one. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of really good ones.
Okay. Now I'm hoping you're, like I said, we're close in age, so I'm hoping you'll have an answer for this one. Do you have a favorite martial arts video game? Did you ever get into video games at all?
Yeah. I believe it or not, I got into martial arts more heavily because I had a little bit of free time on my hands, and I actually was in a consumer electronics store, and I remember looking at video games, and I said to myself, yeah, it's cool, but I think I could spend a little time doing something more active.
Nice.
So I gravitated towards taking martial arts classes as opposed to getting into video games. But when I was oh gosh, but I guess the one that really pops into my mind is the arcade game, Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Mike Tyson.
Nice.
Well, the
Yep.
video game in the arcade, Punch Out.
Yep.
And then you had, I think, on Nintendo, it was Mike Tyson Punch Out.
Yeah.
So those are probably the ones I really, really dug.
That's
and
cool.
I think there was another one, a really, really primitive one called Karate Master.
That sounds familiar.
You had two karate guys facing off. You had half points and full points if you hit somebody. And I used to cheat this game like crazy because all you had to do is do a somersault over the guy and hit him from behind. So I would just somersault hit him from a somersault hit him, and then eventually you would get about 8 or 9 guys in, and then they finally figure it out. It would become harder to pull that same move off.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that was fun.
Okay.
Yeah, that was cool.
Nice. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Wow. I don't even know if I could call it my favorite. It was called maybe I'll just throw it out there. It's called The Master.
Oh, with Lee Van Cleef. Yes.
Yeah. And it was a ninja show, and it was it didn't last very long. It was like 1984 or whatever.
Yep, 1 season, I think.
Yeah, it was just one of those, like, three shows that struck, that aired around the same time. It was The Master. It was a horror anthology series called The Dark Room, which had a really wacky background that was supposed to be Friday the 13th ripoff, but it was too violent, so they made it anthology. And then there was a really, really great police TV series with Robert Stack called, what was the name? Was it Robert Stack? Oh, gosh. It was a cop show, and I just had the name pop into my head. Strike Force.
Oh, yes. Yep.
It was called. And that show, those 3 shows lasted a year and then just disappeared, and now they all kind of have that cult following. But
yep.
Yeah, The Master was kind of neat because there was just nothing like it on TV.
Yeah.
And it was trying to piggyback off the success of all the ninja movies that Kune was releasing at the time.
Yep.
But I guess for a weekly series, it just didn't fly. Oh, and of course you had Kung Fu,
yep.
Which was.
Yeah, a lot of those 1 season shows were so good and didn't last, unfortunately.
They were not cut out for network television.
They
were in today's streaming and cable environment, they would have found their audience. They would have been on a channel that dedicated to that audience. But, yeah, I remember watching Kung Fu, which I loved the TV series. I mean, that was ubiquitous in syndication in the 70s and 80s. As a little kid, or even when you watched it, didn't have as much action. Right. Because it just you couldn't choreograph. Fights, a lot of people don't realize that fight scenes are expensive because you got to shoot them from a lot of angles. You got to do a lot of editing, and it's time and labor intensive. And a show like Kung Fu, which is on a weekly schedule, it's a single camera setup from 35 millimeter back in the 70s. That you couldn't do really elaborate fight scenes, so they focused more on the character. And as I got older, when I watched subsequent viewings of that show and then reading the book Kung Fu, the Mark of Cain, which is a book dedicated to the series, you kind of gained a better appreciation for what they were trying to get across.
Yeah.
As it was basically, he was a gunslinger without a gun, and he was cerebral as opposed to someone like Paladin and Have Gun Will Travel, where they shoot first and ask questions later. They kind of, like Bruce Lee said, it's a concept of a Western turning it into an Eastern. Mm-hmm. So it just well deserved of its cult status. And if you're looking for action, maybe not so much. But if you're looking for interesting action, character-driven stories, an episode of television, Kung Fu really was pretty unique.
So I got to ask, anyone who mentions Kung Fu, have you watched the new series Warrior?
No, I have not, and it's only simply because I just haven't had the time to do it. But that is definitely something I want to check out.
It's good.
I believe that it's based on some of the original concept.
Yeah, it's Shannon Lee is the produces it, and she created it based on her dad's original notes for Kung Fu on what he wanted it to be.
Awesome.
It's phenomenal, and the action is so good. It's amazing fight scenes. Yeah, I think you'll love it. You'll have to check it out and let me know what you think.
I will definitely check it out. Yeah.
How about a favorite martial arts movie?
See, now you got to see, when you say that, 40 movies burn through my head.
Give me your top 3.
depends on how you define top. Like, are you saying the best kung fu movie, the one, like to me, Enter the Dragon is phenomenal.
Yep.
That's like, that's the gold standard of martial arts movies, even though it's really half a James Bond movie, half of a martial arts movie.
Yeah.
And, the characters are diffused, like, John Saxon's there to act, Jim Kelly's there for laughs, and Bruce Lee's there for action. Yeah. So it all comes together as just a really great film.
Yeah.
But the movie that really, the ones that really got was, if you go back to the 1980s,
mm-hmm.
Saturday afternoon was generally syndicated horror and science fiction.
Okay.
And that's what was dumped really on UHF TV and Saturdays and Sundays and the pre VCR, pre cable. I mean, not that it didn't exist, but it just wasn't as big as it was. Yeah. And we were constantly rerunning the same stuff. Well, after years and years and years of the same horror, sci-fi, and westerns and all that over and over again, somebody in Philadelphia decided, you know what, we're going to start putting kung fu movies on, double feature. And it did so well that the other channels started airing. So you were getting, like, for this period of time, like in the mid 80s, you were getting like 4 kung fu movies a week.
That's cool.
As a little kid, I had never seen a kung fu movie or a martial arts movie. I'd only seen ads for them on TV, or I had only seen ads for them in the theater, commercials late at night, or these gaudy, very gaudy newspaper ads. Like, I remember Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger, which I think is probably my favorite Bruce Lee, Lee being L.I.
Yeah.
film, my favorite film of his. But Chinatown Kid popped up on syndicated TV, and that was the first kung fu movie I actually watched, beginning to end, and I was just really enthralled by it because, Chinatown Kid is basically a 1930s gangster movie redone as a 1977 kung fu movie. It's very close to like Little Caesar or Scarface or Public Enemy, or one of those old movies about where this kid wants a better life and he gets involved with the syndicate and he finds out that there's no things are not what they seem when you embrace a life of crime, and it comes with a lot of a price to pay. And it was just a really cool Shaw Brothers over the top kung fu movie with this cool gangster cinema backdrop. Yeah. So really cool. The Flying Guillotine is a classic in terms of schlock. If you're looking for just a weirdo, bizarro, crackpot martial arts movie, that was another popular one on Saturdays. Geez, with Chuck Norris, it's kind of, which one would I want to say Forced Vengeance, but Forced Vengeance is not one of his best films, but that's a movie that was really popular on cable, and VHS back in the day. So a little bit mean-spirited, but atypical for a Chuck Norris movie. It was your classic 80s studio martial arts movie for the time, coming after the end of the martial arts cycle, but before the Rambo cycle where everything would go action. Some of the other good ones, I'll probably think of some.
A lot of good ones you listed.
Shogun Assassin, that's another really cool one.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll even throw, if you want to count Hard Times, the Charles Bronson movie. Good movie,
yeah.
Boxer fighting for gambling winnings, essentially just trying to make a buck. Impression. So that's a great film, definitely.
And I just found Chinatown Kid is actually free streaming on Tubi, so might have to check that one out later.
Oh, but there's so many different versions of it, like a 2-hour version, a 90-minute version.
Yeah, this is an hour 28, the one that's on here.
It's a cut print.
Okay.
Yeah, but oh well.
I'll try to find the regular one. So, all right. Final question. This one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. Any movie you've ever seen, favorite movie fight scene?
Favorite movie fight scene. Robert Shaw and Sean Connery in From Russia with Love.
Nice.
That was heavily censored. It's not even that violent, but it's they went for realism with it, and when that aired on TV, it's not even that long of a fight scene, but even then they censored it very heavily on original network broadcasts. But I don't want to give too much away, but there's a neat way that Connery's James Bond gets the edge on Robert Shaw's character. It plays to his greed, and
that's cool.
That causes Robert Shaw to let his guard down. It's just a very, very, very cool scene. It's really, really cool scene the way it's shot. Jackie Chan, oh my God, I can't even begin to single out any one fight scene that he ever did.
Oh, he's got so many.
That was great because they're just a collective of really just great stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, Enter the Dragon, the ending with the Hall of Mirrors and all that. That's just really classic. Or maybe you go wacky, like Silent Rage, where Chuck Norris now has to fight essentially a zombie, robotic Jason Voorhees type character with a healing factor. It's like, okay, well, how you gonna pull this one off? So that was kind of neat.
Well, if you like wacky, one of my favorite wacky ones is Chuck Norris and Joe Piscopo in Sidekicks.
Yeah, that was when Chuck was trying to do. Chuck was trying to branch out.
Yeah, family-friendly comedy.
Yeah, things like Bronson. We were just getting tired of doing the same type of films, and so he tried to just shake it up a little.
Yep, definitely. Well, Tony, before I let you go, is there anything that I forgot to mention? We want to be sure we get out there, and I'll put when the episode comes out, I'll put links for everything you want me to and whatnot. But anything we want to get in there last minute?
Well, yeah, if you want to check out Tony M. Caro, BJJ on TikTok, that is my little hobbyist little profile that I quite honestly just fool around with now and then because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. And I've been playing around with AI, and I've been just sitting around and brainstorming visual images. Like the last one I did is I said, give me an image of a jiu-jitsu guy on a black and white film noir street corner, and then I'll sit there and I'll say, okay, it's night, and we'll add some rain to it and all this. We'll come up with this neat little Sin City type artist rendition of a jiu-jitsu match in a film noir background. I would look at that and I'd say, hey, you know what? Maybe put some training tips or advice to it. And I would add maybe 10-second blurb or something, like insights of that, like a tip here or there. I might even put a little music to it or this or that. I haven't really promoted it because I haven't really smoothed it out, but I just played around when I put it out there, and people like it. Once I retool it, I'll come up with a finished version, and then maybe I'll start putting it out on IG or expanding it on TikTok or putting it on YouTube or this or that. Just something I play around with in the background. If I hit upon something that, where I say, hey, you know what, I think this is really, really neat. I'm going to push this out there to see if people dig it. But right now I'm just kind of, again, I have a development background, so we like to tool around with this stuff and test it out and see what, when it works and when,
cool.
What works, what doesn't, what we need to revise, people like, and then once we smooth everything out, and then, we go wide with it.
Well, I will put a link for that also when the episode comes out. But seriously, man, this has been a blast. First of all, it's always good talking to another pop culture nerd because I love it. I love pop culture stuff. So I could probably sit and talk to you for hours.
I bounce around a little bit. We got a little bit into the pop culture and all that. I think which is such a huge part of martial arts, such a huge part of what made it successful.
Yeah, agreed.
If you didn't have the movies and TV shows and all that stuff out there, getting the raising public awareness and public consciousness about this weird little world of the martial arts, it wouldn't be as popular because popular just means people know about it.
Yeah. Told the story many times. Literally, the reason I started, I went to the opening weekend of Karate Kid in 1984, and when we were walking out of the movie theater, the local Tung Sudo school was there in the lobby handing out free passes. So, yeah, I literally launched my martial arts career at the age of 10. So, can't beat it. Great marketing in 1984. So.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people really rode that wave.
Yes. Well, seriously, this has been such a blast. I truly appreciate it, and I can't wait to get the episode out for everyone to hear.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.